The story kicks off with Alan sitting quietly on a moving train. He's scribbling a letter to a girl named Lydia, admitting that things didn't go his way. He totally bombed the court sorcerer exam. Now he's flat broke, can't even afford a ticket back home. Then we flash back to earlier. His teacher looks stunned when he hears about Alan's failure. The guy honestly thought Alan would pass without a hitch. He asks what went wrong, but Alan's just as confused. When Alan admits he's out of money because he sent most of it home, the professor gets a bit mad, not for helping his family, but for not keeping anything for himself. Still, the professor has a backup plan. He knows someone important, Duke Howard, who needs a tutor for his daughter. It's a temporary gig that pays well and lasts until spring. Alan's curious, but doesn't even get a chance to fully react before the professor is already making the arrangements over the phone. That's when Alan finds out who he's going to be teaching. The girl is Tina Howard, daughter of one of the 4 major dukes in the kingdom. Her goal? Get accepted into the Royal Academy before spring. With no time to waste, Alan sets off. He's picked up by an old butler named Graham and a quiet maid who introduces herself as Ellie. Graham apologizes for the cramped ride and makes a joke about seating arrangements. Things get awkward, but they roll with it. As they ride through the chilly weather, Alan notices something strange. Ellie's ribbon. It has shiny golden threads, way too fancy for regular servants. He hands her his scarf when she shivers and even warms up the carriage with a simple spell. She's surprised he can use such smooth magic, but Alan just shrugs it off. Eventually they reach the mansion. Alan helps her down and, instead of treating her like a maid, greets her with surprising respect. It turns out he's already figured out the truth. This so-called maid is actually Tina herself. The clues? Her outfit, the golden ribbon. Those little details screamed nobility. Graham chuckles, impressed that Alan caught on so quickly. Alan's old professor was right. This guy notices everything. Tina, totally flustered, rushes inside. Once they're in the mansion, Alan comments on how cozy the place feels. Graham explains it was built to stay warm during the freezing northern winters. Just then, the actual maid, named Ellie, shows up to carry Alan's luggage, but she trips at the doorway. Alan catches her before she falls. Graham scolds her for being careless, while Alan kindly tells her it's okay and gives her a soft pat on the head. The girl turns bright red, and Graham jokes that Alan seems to charm girls effortlessly, just like his professor warned. Alan brushes it off, but before he can say much, Graham tells him the Duke wants to talk. In the study, Duke Walter Howard lays out the real reason Alan was brought there. Sure, tutoring Tina is part of the job, but the main goal is something else entirely. Convince Tina to stop chasing her dream of joining the Royal Academy. This throws Alan for a loop. The Duke explains that his family is one of the kingdom's major powerhouses, in charge of guarding the northern territories. They've got a proud history of warriors and powerful magic users. Walter's wife passed away when Tina was young, and his older daughter, Stella, is already studying at the academy. She's smart and strong, but she doesn't have the special magical spark their family needs to pass down a certain ancient spell. So, all hopes are now pinned on Tina. But here's the catch. Tina has mana inside her, but it's like it's asleep. No matter how many mages have examined her, none of them can explain why her magic refuses to take shape. She can't even pull off a basic wind spell. That's why the Duke doesn't want her wasting time chasing something that may never happen. He wants Alan to help her let go of that dream, gently. Tina looked a little unsure. She wasn't confident about how to study for the entrance test, especially since the academy kept switching things up every year. It felt like trying to aim at a moving target. But Alan wasn't worried. He explained that while the questions looked different every time, they actually followed the same basic pattern, something most people didn't notice because they were too focused on memorizing stuff instead of understanding how it all worked. That surprised Tina. If there really was a method behind the madness, that meant she could actually prepare in advance. Alan had already figured this out and even made practice sheets based on the usual format. All she had to do was finish them before the day ended. Tina nodded, ready to take it on. Later that night, Alan sat down to check what she wrote. To his shock, she didn't just do well. She nailed every answer. It was spot on, not even a tiny mistake. He couldn't help but think she might be even sharper than Lydia, the girl he used to tutor. Lydia wasn't just anyone. She was the daughter of a powerful noble, known far and wide for her sword skills and wildfire magic. People looked up to her like she was untouchable. She had even managed to pull off a rare spell that only a few could even dream of learning. But seeing Tina's written work, Alan felt she could match Lydia in brains, at least when it came to theory. The next morning, Alan gave Tina the good news. She was more than ready for the written part of the exam. She might even top the list. Tina beamed with happiness. It wasn't often she heard anything nice about her abilities. Alan told her they could now move on from books and focus on the next big challenge, using real magic. But just like that, her smile faded. The idea of practical spells clearly brought back bad memories. She told Alan how every time she tried to use magic, it ended in failure. Tutors had come and gone, all giving up on her when they couldn't help her cast even the simplest spell. Alan listened without judging. He told her that messing up wasn't something to be ashamed of. He had failed too, not long ago. Tina looked surprised. As far as she knew, Alan was the guy who helped Lydia become a top student. But Alan admitted that while he was proud of helping her, people didn't know the full story. His own magic power was below average. He only got into the magic school because of the success people credited to him as Lydia's tutor. Still, despite his efforts, he had recently failed his own entrance exam to the Royal Academy. It wasn't easy to get in, and even harder to stay. Many smart and talented students couldn't make it to graduation. It wasn't just about brains. It was about grit, control, and natural talent. Before they started their next session, Alan wanted to know something from Tina. Did she really want to join the academy for herself? Or was she doing it because her family expected her to? Tina didn't take long to respond. She said it was her choice. Nobody pushed her into it. This was something she truly wanted. Alan reminded her that staying home and working on her plant research was still a great path. She had real talent there too. But Tina had something else to say, something she'd never told anyone before. She hesitated, then asked Alan not to laugh. Back when she was little, her mum used to read her storybooks. They were filled with epic tales about mighty wizards and legendary spells. One in particular always stuck with her. Those powerful one-of-a-kind spells that could only be used once, often at great risk. Ever since then, she dreamed of learning one herself. But no one ever took that dream seriously. Supreme spells weren't something anyone really expected to master. They were just stories, after all. Alan didn't laugh. In fact, he told her something she didn't expect. He believed her. He believed in her dream, and as long as she held onto it, they'd keep working together to make it real, no matter how tough it got. That one moment gave Tina a sense of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. She nodded, a real smile on her face. Just then, the door creaked open. The maid Ellie came in, holding a tray full of candles. But, as usual, her clumsy side showed up. She tripped, and the candles flew into the air like fireworks about to crash. Ellie tripped again. No surprise there. The tray she was carrying wobbled, and the candles nearly hit the floor. But before anything crashed, Alan moved fast. He grabbed her arm to stop the fall and used a bit of magic to float the candles mid-air before setting them gently on the table. Tina stood nearby, watching the whole thing. For some reason, seeing Alan help Ellie so naturally made something twist in her chest. It didn't sit right with her, so she quietly asked for some space. The two stepped back, sensing the mood shift. Not wanting things to get awkward, Alan switched gears and got back to business. He told Tina it was time to officially start her magic training. First up, a quick review. He asked her to explain the basics of elemental magic. Tina did well. She listed out the core types: fire, water, wind, earth, lightning, light, and shadow. She mentioned how people are usually born with a link to one or two, and that her own family was mostly known for their control over water and wind, which could combine into ice. Alan said she wasn't wrong, but there was more to it than that. He asked her what it actually meant to have an affinity for an element, but she didn't have a clear answer. To explain, Alan brought up a spell he used earlier, the one he cast during their carriage ride to make it warmer. That spell wasn't made from just one type of magic. It was a mix of several: fire to heat the air, water to balance the moisture, and wind to keep it circulating. Normally, fire and water cancel each other out, but Alan showed it's possible to make them work together if you understand how they behave. In his view, elemental limits are more about belief than rules. He then told both Tina and Ellie that today's lesson would be hands-on. On the table, he placed 8 candles in a line. He asked each of them to try using different elements on the flames, starting with what they were most comfortable with. He turned to Ellie first. She admitted she only knew a couple of beginner spells, mostly fire and wind. Alan asked her to light one candle. She focused, whispered the incantation softly, and to her surprise, it lit up right away. Alan smiled and told her to try using wind next, to blow it out. She gave it a go, and the flame shook, but didn't go out. Still, Alan was happy with her effort. Using more than one element, even in a basic way, meant she had potential. Ellie smiled faintly, though she didn't look fully confident. Alan reassured her, saying she had enough talent to make it past the entrance test if she kept practicing. Then it was Tina's turn. She stepped forward, hands slightly shaking, and gathered her mana. Alan could feel it, a strong, steady flow of magical energy. She shaped the spell carefully, with good form and control. Everything looked right, but when she tried to cast it, nothing. No spark, no movement, just silence. Tina looked down and mumbled an apology. Alan told her there was no reason to feel bad. It was clear she had mana. The real question was why it refused to come out when needed. He said he'd show her something different, something that might help. Alan walked over to the candles and held out his hand. He didn't use just one element. He blended several at once. One by one, each candle lit up, their flames glowing steadily. Then, with a cold shimmer of ice magic, he froze the air around them. But instead of snuffing them out, the flames kept burning inside the frost, creating a surreal, glowing ice lantern effect. Tina and Ellie both stared, stunned. It was beautiful and strange. Alan watched their faces and thought, if I can learn this much, they can too. I used to be the one no one believed in, and now I'm the one teaching. Meanwhile, the story shifted far away from the Duke's home. In a grand estate elsewhere, a girl named Lydia opened a letter. She recognized the messy handwriting right away. It was from Alan. He wrote that he'd be working with the Howard family for a while, until spring at least. He apologized for disappearing without notice and asked her not to be too mad. She read the letter out loud, fuming. Of course she was mad. Alan had vanished without a word, and now he thought a letter would fix it? She crumpled the note in her hand and stormed off, already plotting what she'd do when she saw him again. And just like that, the episode came to a close. If you like this story and want to see where it's headed, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications so you catch every new episode. Thanks for watching. See you next time.